Hey, welcome back to another episode of the OWNR OPS Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Gray, and in this episode, I have Brandon Dixon and Jake Pavelle joining me again. They've both been on the podcast for solo episodes. Brandon shares his step-by-step process for how he does cold email outreach and how he's used that to grow cleaner streets. And then Jake Pavelle shares some of his cold calling strategies. Brandon will share like all the softwares he uses, how he goes about creating lists to find property owners, how he automates campaigns, what all he does manually. It's all good stuff. So stick around for the whole episode. I believe no matter what industry you're in, no matter what service you offer, you can utilize these cold email outreach strategies and these cold calling strategies to help grow your business. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode. If you are a land clearing, excavation, grading, or snow removal contractor, check out landservicemarketers.com. LSM is the same growth agency I've used to grow Bear Claw Land Services from 0 to over 7 figures of revenue. We've created a seamless process for owner operators to upload photos and videos from the field, and LSM will do all the heavy lifting for you on the back end. They'll do all the editing, all of the publishing, all the social media management, and they'll run your paid ads to bring you more leads so that you can close more high-ticket jobs. Check out landservicemarketers.com. Brandon, why don't you start us off with just kind of giving us the 101, like how did you get into cold outreach? And then Jake, I'm going to let you just ask all the questions that you wanted to ask about cold outreach strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm by no means an expert. We kind of started this. I kind of started things January, February. Started kind of diving into it, but I had a guy on Twitter, Chandler Reed, reach out to me, and I knew he had been in he had bought a B2B SMB. I think they do like commercial light manufacturing or something like that, install. And one of the first things he said to me was like, hey man, figure out cold email and like you can grow that top line fairly easy and kind of have it running behind the scenes without doing a ton of work. So that was kind of like the initial thing. And then just kind of went down the YouTube, Twitter, all the rabbit holes of where you learn things these days. So everything I've learned from either a course or a YouTube or whatever. So it's nothing crazy. There's people you can pay to do this. There's cold email agencies. There's all sorts of things. There's a whole world behind it. But yeah, so for us, it started with, okay, first you have to find out who your customer is. So knowing exactly what that profile looks like down to location, industry, who in the business you want to contact, whatever. So for us, we kind of have 3 or 4 profiles of like property managers, HOA managers, anyone who owns a commercial parking lot. And then we have kind of the construction, excavation, dirt hauling, utility contractors. And then more on the other side of the parking lot is like industrial businesses that have their own kind of real estate, cardboard manufacturers, water purifiers, just people who have shipments coming in and out. So I started by going to, what is it, Fiverr and Upwork, where you can just hire someone to create these lists. It's fairly cheap to do. You have to be super specific, but yeah. So creating good lists is kind of the key here. Like you're only going to get results if you have people who are actually interested in your service. And then from there, I started just using my cell phone and cold calling every single number. And I probably got through, I'd say 3 to 5,000. Like I was like crushing the phones. And finally I was like, man, I can't do this and run the business. Like I can't keep this up and run the business. And so that's when I kind of was like, all right, cold email, let's get into this. So we've continued to do the cold calling, and that works, I think, better. It just takes more man hours to do. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story of how we got into it.
Well, that's great, man. I mean, it's fair. It's very similar with how I'm rolling right now because I think the difference is with what I'm doing, I'm still like in my spare time, I'm actively prospecting on Google and in the field, adding those names to the CRM, And then the following day or whenever I have time again, that's when I'll go call those people because I'll have jobs in between. So at the stage of business that I'm at right now, I'm trying to figure out how to mass contact the cold prospects, because there is a lot of value in that. Of course, like having a warm prospect is ideal, but the target market that you're going after, you're not going to meet everybody, or you're not going to have a mutual connection with everybody. So how do you get in contact with them in the max, like in max capacity? And I think that is through cold email, because you have a limit with cold calling, that I'm finding is being a little bit of a Achilles tendon or Achilles heel to my business right now, because I'll have jobs for 4 days out of the week, and then I only have one day to go prospect and one day to call. And so from my sales background, if you're not prospecting, if you're not calling, then you're not really moving your business forward, because at some point it's going to hit a roadblock where you don't have jobs or you don't have meetings lined up after your last one. And then then that's where the kind of the ebbs and flows start happening, because you're constantly on the roller coaster where you do jobs for 2 weeks, and then you do 2 weeks of prospecting, and then those 2 weeks of prospecting lead to 2 more weeks of work, and then it's that constant just ride that I'm trying to smooth out as much as possible in the beginning. And so that's interesting um how you started with cold calling, and you're still doing it when you have time, but you've transitioned that and it's evolved into being more of a cold email strategy, because then you're reaching a much wider audience. And so it's no different than, I guess, like advertisements or social media. Like you're just it's just a cold outreach strategy behind reaching a wider audience. So that's great,
Yeah,
man.
I'll go for it.
So Brandon, where would you? So right now, Jake's awesome on the phones. Comes from a sales background, and I know this because Jake and I know each other previously from working together. But that's how he's grown his business. Now, how would you recommend that he go actively put this list together?
I think that depends on a few things. So I'll kind of walk you through like how we now create lists. So I typically don't use Upwork. I don't really have someone go scrape them. I tend to do it myself. And I'm creating this week, I'm creating a little SOP for our ops manager overseas to start creating lists regularly, like on a schedule. But I typically, so for the pressure washing side, are you dealing with commercial real estate owners, or is it business owners, or like who's the main profile? Because that kind of depends on where you should go, but I'll give you a few options regardless.
Yes. So the target, like my target market is very similar to yours, in the sense of, commercial property managers, HOAs, like even apartment complex property managers, parking, like people who own parking lots, or just general business owners. And so, yeah, the target market, like when you're listing off your ideal prospect, I was like, oh man, there's some correlation there. So this is, you know, I could probably plug and play what you're doing, fairly similar. Of course, there are going to be some minor differences in that, but for the most part,
Yeah.
at a high level,
Okay.
it's more or less the same.
What I've found, so we do a few different ones that have kind of worked in different levels. So at like the lowest level, a cheap list that you can go obviously pay someone for. The next step up would be going on something like Outscraper. And Outscraper is great because you only pay for the leads that you download or that you put in, and so you can kind of narrow it down by industry type, by who you're contacting. So you want like a key decision maker or whatever. You can your location. You'll put in every city in your service area. It's pretty self-explanatory when you get on there, and just dabble around on there. And it's really cheap. I think I just ran a list the other day for like maybe 500 contacts, and most of them come with email, and then some also come with phone numbers. And I think it cost me like $15. Like, not, it's super cheap, but it's, you're doing it, and you'll get some that aren't super great. The thing that you have to do if you're going to do cold email is you have to verify the emails. So run them through. I use Million Verifier. I think there's a few other ones out there, but that one seems to work for us. Outscraper is great. You can put in a ton of different things and get a lot out of it. The other interesting one that we've done is using, it's a real estate website basically, and they have a free trial. And so Chris Corner, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but he told me about this actually when I was looking to subcontract a bunch of parking garages, like some of the big parking garages, which are huge pressure washing jobs. He told me about a website called Reonomy, and you can get a 7-day free trial for that. And it has a ton of filters of like the real estate owners, and you can narrow it down to having, parking garages, or like for land clearing, I think you can do it based on acreage. So like it has to be a certain size. So someone that would fit that profile. And you can do industrial, like kind of anything, HOA, condominiums, whatever. But those, you're contacting the owner, which I think, depending on who you're going after, like for us, the industrial side was really good on that, because typically that's the business owner who also owns the real estate. And so we found a lot of luck with that. And he put me in contact with a guy. Basically, you go in, you save 4 different types or categories, and I gave my login details to someone overseas who helped me out. He scraped all the information. I think we got 30,000 contacts from that, and we've been just crushing that list. And that one was definitely on the more expensive side, because I'm paying someone to go onto a website and then create a CSV of all of this. But that one has been by far the most effective. I'm actually thinking about spinning up another. You have to have a company email to get your free trial, and I'm thinking about spinning up another company email just to do it again. So to get my 7 days.
So with Reonomy, so you can almost drill down into a specific property that you're looking for, like an ideal like space, and it gives you the property manager, like the real estate owner's information for that property.
I mean, it'll give you
right?
like when it was last sold, who the last owner was. It gives you like way too much information, which is, I think it's only commercial real estate on there. I think there's a couple other websites. One is called Crexy as well. And these are just kind of websites that commercial real estate agents and stuff use. But yeah, that one was really good. You typically, you're getting in contact with someone who either is managing the property themselves or hired the property manager, and they can refer you to whoever's doing it. So I really I enjoyed that one. That one went really well for us. We probably picked up 3 or 4 recurring jobs from that. And so like for the total understanding of like cold email, you'll start this and you'll be like, man, I'm contacting, 5,000 people in a month, and think like, I'm going to have more work than I know what to do with. It doesn't work that well, unfortunately. It's you get a lot of take me off this list. I'm out of the office right now. I'll be back in 5 days. Like a lot of those responses. But it's, we've picked up, I think I was trying to go back through our customers. It's kind of hard to tell, because a lot of times they'll call in after. They don't need street sweeping that day. typically they call in, 3 weeks later and you're top of mind. So they kind of cross pollinate with who we think is coming from Google as well. But I know I've found at least 6 jobs that we've done, 3 that are recurring, 3 or 4 that are recurring, like 1,500 to 2,000 a month in recurring, and then one excavation company that's I think we've done 20,000 for them so far this year. So like it's already paid for itself. Like I thought, if I get one job, it's going to pay for itself. So it's really like, it just makes sense to do. It's pretty low risk and going to be your cheaper investments.
Striker Digital specializes in SEO services specifically for local service businesses. Bodie and Andy, the 2 co-founders, have helped me get Bear Claw Land Services to the #1 search result on Google inside my state for my specific search term. If you want to learn more, visit strikerdigital.com. That's STRYKER-digital.com.
How are you crafting all the emails? Like, do you have a sequence of automation set up on the back end to where if your ideal market or your ideal prospect clicks on the email, expresses interest, I would just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it might go to like a landing page possibly, or is it just like, call us today, and then they pick up the phone and call you? But like, is there any email automation set up to where, you don't have to craft every email that you send out? And for those emails that you do send out initially, are you using, AI, or are you just writing them yourself to make them personal, or is it a template that you use? Like, could you walk us through that?
Yeah.
How that
So
works from your side?
that takes a little bit more like research to go down, but I'll give you kind of how I figured it out, learned it, whatever, and what we use. So first off, you want to make sure you're sending emails from another domain that's similar to yours. So if you're sending it from your business domain and you're sending out mass emails, Google might eventually like think that you're spam. Then now your company email is not landing in inboxes, which would be like, that'd be a nightmare. And so there's a few places that you can go buy them, but I think like we use Pork Bun. I think it's porkbun.com, and you can go buy, yeah, you can go buy domains. I think it's maybe $8 for the year. And so like, for example, we bought getcleanerstreets.com or trycleanerstreets.com. So they're all very, very similar. That would make sense. And then from there, you just kind of get creative, and you'll then, from each domain, we set up a Microsoft Outlook account, and then each domain can have 2 email addresses associated with it. And so like getcleanerstreets.com has Brandon at Get Cleaner Streets, and then it has my business partner at Get Cleaner Streets. And so you can do that. You're going to have to pay for every Outlook account that you do. So for us, I think we went a little overkill when I first started this, because I was watching YouTube videos of these people who have like actual agencies doing this, not street sweeping. But I set up 20. We definitely didn't need 20. We still have them, and I kind of cycle them in and out so that they don't kind of get picked up as spam and some of the filters. But from there on Outlook, you're going to have to, I can send you kind of like my SOP that I've found. There's a few resources, but you're going to have to set up like URL forwarding. So when someone clicks or tries to type in that website, it's going to go to your website. So you want to make it like professional. Then you're going to have to set up within Outlook a couple of records. I think they're called like DNS and CNAME, and a few different records in Outlook. And then also on Pork Bun, there's a bunch of YouTube videos to kind of like walk you through how to do that and like exactly what to do. It's a very like, all right, follow this step, put it in, follow this step, put it in. There's ways to do it. So once you have all of that set up, like your Outlook, your pork bun, you got all your accounts ready to roll. Then we set it up and put it into Smart Lead. It's a software that you can kind of do what you were asking, where you can you can plug in this list of emails of 5,000 people, and you can set up the variance of when it's going to send. So you can set it up to where it'll send every 3 minutes in different amounts of time at different times of the day, all sorts of filters so that it looks like a human is sending these emails. That's kind of the goal. And so we use Smart Lead. I think there's an option for like $35 a month for that. And then depending on how much volume, there's one up to like 95. And so within there, you have to make sure that you warm up these emails. You can't just create an email and then start just spamming people, because that's a red flag right away for Google and Outlook. And so if you do that, they have some parameters that they suggest, and it's basically a 14-day warm up my email inbox, and then it's ready to roll. And so once you get that, you plug in basically a CSV file of all of the email addresses. You can kind of change some of the filters of how you're going to set it up. So we do typically like A, B, and C emails within each campaign to get an idea of which one's working best, whatever. And you can do like, I think they're super simple. Like, hey, first name, do you guys at business name ever hire out street sweeping services? Question. Like, just a super simple question. And your goal is just start a conversation. If you can verify that we use Bob down the street. I now know, like, this one goes into, I'm going to call it and I'm going to talk with them. How often do you hire it? What are their prices? Like, can I help you out here? Anything like that. So super simple. And then you can set up within their subsequences of like, okay, no response, 5 days later, they get this email. Hey, just wanted to send a reminder, like, we're a local street sweeping company. We help companies that are similar to yours with any construction cleanup or any dirt hauling that they do to keep the city off their back. Let me know if you ever need anything. Like, very simple stuff. But all through Smart Lead, you can kind of create that.
And so, yeah, that's thanks for sharing Smart Lead and Pork Bun. Love that name. So how did you figure out the sequence of emails? Like, was that just trial and error, or were they, because like in my mind, I'm like, whenever I type an email, I have to pivot and just think on the spot based on the response of the customer or the prospect. So how did you figure out the email sequence um to send depending on their response? Because I think there's and this is kind of a sidebar, but I like what you said about just trying to start a conversation with them. You're not trying to sell them on something right away, which I find a lot of people can fall into the trap of, even with just cold calling and talking to someone on the phone. They're trying to oversell their service or their product on the phone, whereas the goal of the phone call is really just to start a conversation with the goal of booking an appointment to go see them in person to then talk about more of what to do. So that's a good thing that you guys do, which I caught up on. But yeah, just go back to like how you craft the email sequence and what that process looks like.
I think the most important part is that first email, and like, I think subject line, you can kind of play with that as well, of like, sweeping question mark or question for business name, whatever. You just want them, like, the goal is like subject line, get them to click. The next one is like, make it somewhat personalized as much as you can, where it's not going to be like throwing out weird stuff, and show that you automated it, and then get them to respond. So it's always like get them to the next step. And so for us, like the subsequences, I only set it up if they don't respond to automatically send. And that's, I don't want to like pester them, bug them, whatever. I just like, in case they were out of the office for 5 days, I set it up for the 7th day so that I get around that filter at some point. And like, sometimes I know I do this. If I show up Monday morning and my email is overcrowded, like if there's things that look somewhat spammy, it's gone right away. But I might hit them on a day where things are kind of slow, and they might actually read my message. So I only set up the subsequence if it's not responded to. Anything that is responded to within Smart Lead, there's a master inbox, and I run all of my emails through there. So you can just like, it'll show kind of like a similar email account. It'll show, hey, you got a response, open it up, and I reply directly from there. And it'll just kind of like bake into whenever the next time it's going to send. So it might not send right away, but within the next hour, it'll be sent. And from there, I try and get a phone number if I can. Like, hey, would tomorrow afternoon be a good time to hop on a call and just kind of explain what we do, get to know you, and see if this works for you. But yeah, it's just kind of like that. You're going down a hill and you just want to keep getting to the next step and the next step. So you're probably, we have closed on email without getting on a phone, but that's pretty rare. Typically you're going to either go see the site in person and give them an estimate or whatever. So that's kind of how we view things.
Are you the one managing that right now, Brandon, when it goes to your master inbox, or do you have ops manager following up with those?
She is letting me know when there's a new email in our inbox. I was letting her kind of run things, and then I set up some cold email for my mother-in-law and father-in-law. And so I have, within my Smart Lead, I have other people, not just our business, that I don't really want her responding to. So I eventually will have her kind of running everything. I showed her how to do it, but didn't set up the right SOPs and like, hey, this is exactly how I want you to do it. And so eventually she'll take all of it over.
Okay, cool. And you're doing all the calling?
I don't do any of the calling anymore. That's completely her now. And so I've given her a basic script, and it helps her with talking with the customers. And we have like a similar philosophy of like, she's not trying to sell. A lot of times she's not talking about prices the first time. It's just like, hey, do you guys ever hire this service? Have you ever had any interest in this? Does your community need street sweeping now that it's fall and there's a bunch of leaves in the area? Anything like that. And then if it's a verified lead, I'll kind of follow up on it. So it's kind of like, let's get to step 2 or 3 where it's actually a possible lead, and then I kind of step in there.
Okay, sweet. So I believe we're getting to the point of the call here. And Jake, you brought up cold calling, and I know that that's how you've grown Colorado Powerwash at this point. Brandon, at this point, we're considering this lead a warm lead because you've already contacted them and had conversations with them via email. Now let's jump into the call portion. Before we do that, I'm going to do a quick recap. And Jake, I've seen you taking notes over here. Just so you guys know, we've built an AI process to basically we transcribe this, we summarize it, we take notes. So we'll create some bullet points with all of these resources that Brandon shared. At a high level, we're talking use things like Outscraper to go get a list, right? Go get domains, season your domains, and then send emails in things like Smart Lead. Brandon, is there anything else that you'd like to add, just kind of as a high level recap of the process for cold email before we jump?
No, I think that covers it. Within each one of those, there's a ton of nuance. But just that'll get you started, and search those into YouTube and you'll find all the resources you need. So that's definitely a good like overview of how to get going.
Perfect. We'll include links to all those in the show notes for anybody listening that you want direct links to the websites they mentioned. If you're watching on video, I did try to do screen share for a couple of those, just so you guys have an idea of what you're looking for whenever you search that online. Now we're to the call. So I believe both of you are very good at this. Why don't we let Brandon just take it? Like, whenever you get somebody on the phone, how do you handle this? What are your go-tos? And then Jake, we'll jump into just like, how do you approach cold calling as well?
Typically, I know that at this point, they are a customer or a possible customer. So I want to just ask them questions and get them talking, get them, whether it's construction, they need someone because the city's on them and their project could get fined or shut down or whatever. So it's like, hey, can you resolve my problem as quick as possible? Now, the property manager side, the HOAs, that I know is going to be a month before I find out if they make a decision, because they got to go to the board and all of this. So my goal there is just to kind of prove that we do this for a lot of communities. This is what to expect. This is what we can provide. Have you had any issues with your current company that's doing it? Like, do they not show up on the right day? Do they show up on trash day and now they're not getting the whole street, or any sort of like the main issues that typically come with this? Or do they show up every once in a while? That I think shows that, like, okay, we're a reliable company. You can trust us. That's kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to build trust that, like, you're a real business. And that's what, having a Google My Business profile, like, they're going to search you after, they're going to look at your website, like, just look professional. And then from there, it's if they're ready and they want pricing, I'll try and get it to them as quick as possible. If it's going to take some time, they want to meet someone, that's where it gets tricky, because I don't actually live where my business is. And so I have a couple of my drivers that they can do estimating on the spot. And I also have a subcontractor he's awesome. Today he's meeting with a possible customer, acting like a Cleaner Streets employee, and he was like, I won't talk pricing, anything like that. And we'll try and get this sale, because if you win, I win. So that's been helpful as well. So that's kind of how we look at things, do things, view it.
Jake, you're a master at cold calling, and I know this because of your past work experience. You've been through the ringer, no pun intended, and you guys got really good at this at your past, one of your past employers. And so I know that this is something that you've applied to growing Colorado Powerwash. Like, what's your strategy whenever you get people on the phone?
Yeah, so it's been years of evolution and trial and error. Like I remember at my past employer that Austin's referring to, there were a lot of people that just right off the bat, they're like, man, how are you so good on the phones? Like, what's your secret? Like, how are you doing that? And I take the approach of, that it's just a game. Like, I think of it as a game. Like, I don't know who the other person is on the phone. I don't know if they're gonna be open to meeting with me. If they are, great. If not, no big deal. I'll just move to the next one, and it's not gonna negatively affect what I'm going after and what my goals are. I take the approach of just being cool, calm, and collected. Like, I'm not a telemarketer trying to sell somebody something over the phone or get someone, like I was mentioning earlier, when I was talking to Brandon on it. But yeah, just when you, and of course, like, I add bits and pieces here as I learn new things. So there's an interesting approach that I found the other day that I haven't tried yet. So I'll let y'all know how it works out. But it went something like this. That someone answers the phone, and instead of going right into the pitch, they're like, oh, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, I was just doing a little bit of research and found your business, and I found some really interesting things, and I think what y'all are doing is very impressive. Like the growth you guys are experiencing, the way you guys are doing it, it's really cool stuff. Um, versus saying like, oh hey, like I'm so and so with Colorado Powerwash, do you guys need power washing services? I'll be, in your area. Would love to meet you. Like just kind of vomiting the information all at them all at once. It's just literally having a conversation, but it's a genuine conversation at the same time. If you don't find something interesting, then don't say it. Don't lie to them because then that you won't come off as being genuine from what I've found. So yeah, I just sort of take a soft approach to it. And the goal of the conversation is to, like Brandon said earlier, just find out if they're interested, see if they're not interested, then ask a few follow-up questions. And then if they are interested, book an appointment with them, a site visit. In Brandon's case, it's a little bit different, of course, but if you're in a local market, highly recommend going in person to develop a relationship because the relationships are one of the pillars of what of the foundation that Colorado Power Wash at least stands for. Because in a digital age that we're at now, in my opinion, everyone still needs the connection and still needs that camaraderie, and being able to meet with somebody else goes a long way in developing long lasting partnerships. So yeah, I mean, with cold calling, it's literally I just keep it simple, and I'm similar to Brandon developing SOPs. I'm working on creating various different scenarios with cold calling and phone calling scripts that once I have it finished, I'd be glad to share it. But the biggest thing about it is use it as a foundation. Like use any sort of a script as just a baseline, but add your own personal touch to it to not make it sound so robotic because you can easily just and you hear it sometimes with people that call you randomly. You can immediately tell they're reading off of a script, and no matter what you say, they have the next thing that they have to say right there. So the more that you can just let it flow and talk to somebody like it's your best friend, the more chances there are that they'll book with you and want to meet you.
So one of your big jobs recently that I know about, well, it's actually like one of your first ones, the big parking garage that you did. Talk me through, was that inbound lead or did you reach out to them cold?
That was a referral,
Oh, okay.
But the same principles apply though, right?
So the other ones that you've gotten, like the retail centers and whatnot, and I know that you mentioned this in your last podcast episode, even like the Walmart. It's like I'm sure you're prospecting, you're coming up with some sort of list in your own way. It's obviously not exactly what Brandon was doing, but I'm sure you're looking places up or looking phone numbers up. When you call that property management company or that apartment complex, it's like what are you saying on the phone?
Yeah. So first off, I'm always prospecting. Out in the field, I'm constantly have my notes section open on my phone, writing down any new content information that I have that I find when I'm out in the field that you're not going to come across on Google more often than not. Especially if they have an area that's dirty, like a dirty sidewalk or a dirty dumpster bay. Figure out who the like go. So like the retail center that I did that I spent 2 nights out till 4 a.m. doing. Um, that one, so I stopped by the liquor store. I got the property manager's contact information, and then I called him and I was like, hey, Michael, Jake Pavelle with Colorado Power Wash. You and I haven't met yet. My wife and I live just across the street from the strip center that you manage. I was over there the other day and noticed that the sidewalks had a bunch of bird poop on it. The dumpsters were really dirty. The reason for my call was to see if you'd be opposed to me sending you an estimate for power washing services. And I like saying, "Are you opposed to, or would you be against to, or would you be against me?" Because I read a book that was start with no, so it allows them the chance to be comfortable saying no and not feeling forced to saying yes, because it just, sometimes with sales, people are always just trying to go to the yes all the time. But if they're not interested, let them feel comfortable saying no, and move forward in that manner, instead of just feeling obligated to say yes to get through the conversation because they don't want to talk to a sales guy for very long. But yeah, that's kind of how it went. And the same framework, the same just general script, I guess, for lack of better words, applies to referrals too. So if you get a warm lead, you pick up the phone and call them. Hey, this is Jake Pavelle with Colorado Powerwash. Or I don't even say the business. I say, hey, it's Jake Pavelle. And they're like, oh, hey, Jake, how's it going? Good. You and I haven't met before, but Logan suggested I call you. I was with him the other day, and he thought you might be a good person um, to contact or to meet. But oh yeah, I know Logan. Okay, great. Yeah. So the reason for my call is I own a power washing business here in the area. I learned that you were in construction, and we do post construction cleanup. How are you guys currently handling that for the projects you guys have? But oh, we typically do it ourselves. Okay, great. Like, tell me more about that. Like, what does that look like? Like, what does doing it yourself mean to you? And just so I can learn more about how you all operate. And so then they'll go into um, explaining more of how they're handling it. And so, like with phone calls, it's just finding information out. Like Brandon said, it's easy to overcomplicate, easy to get in the weeds, easy to overthink it, easy to um, you know, lose confidence if you have a bad phone call. I mean, I have bad phone calls all the time where I hang up and I'm like, dang, like, why the hell did I say that? Like, that was stupid. But you learn and you get better. And I mean, you like look back and laugh at those conversations because you're like, dang it, man, like that was a good prospect, but I probably screwed that up. But then what's fun is if you know where that person office is, you go drop by if you're in the area and be like, hey, you may make a joke out of it. You're like, man, I was thinking back to our conversation. I'm Jake with Colorado Power Wash. Like you and I talked on the phone the other day. I was thinking back to our conversation. I was like, man, like I feel like I royally screwed this up because of what I said on the phone, and just kind of have a laugh about it and be like, you know what? I'm sorry if I overstepped my boundaries with what I said. We would still love an opportunity to discuss doing some work for you if you wouldn't be opposed to that. And so like just it that's another thing that I do too is when I have a phone call with someone and they say no, I'll still go drop by their office building or their try to meet them in person some way by just dropping by to meet them and shake their hand because it's very different talking to someone on the phone, but it's a whole nother level to meet them in person because then they know your face, they know who you are, and you're just hitting them again and again and again. And you never know where those types of relationships will lead because you may not see it come through until another year or two. But it's just that the patience and the repetition and the consistency that will eventually get you to where you want to go.
And that's the thing, like both of you have mentioned it, we're offering services that are needed and necessary. So these people who you're contacting, they're likely going to pay somebody to do it at some point. So if I think way too many people put way too much pressure on a cold outreach strategy, having to sell over email, or a cold call strategy, having to sell over the phone. It's like, that's not the goal of this. The goal is literally so that's like, I mean, you're wearing your branded shirt, right? Colorado Power Wash. You're wearing a branded hat. I'm wearing OWNR OPS. It's like every time somebody is viewing this, like I want them to think about the brand, right? And it's no different than building a service business. If you're getting in front of a customer with cleaner streets and you're wearing your hat or your shirt and you're sending them an email and you're following up with them, if you're doing it with Colorado Power Wash and you're shaking people's hand, like whenever they need those services, they're just going to think about you. And so you mentioned it, Jake, these things may not be fruitful like right now, but you may get something 12 months from now from your efforts that you put in today. So man, this has been a lot of fun. Cold outreach, cold calling. Brandon, what else would you add on cold outreach as far as just advice for people who want to get into it?
Like you were saying, Jake was saying, you're not going to sell someone a service that they don't want. So like there really isn't much pressure, because it's like, if someone doesn't want street sweeping, I'm not going to convince them to buy my service. Like they're just not going to buy it. And so it's super easy just to be a human and have like just normal interactions. And I mean, from the cold calling, I've gotten a ton of people who are just like, hey, I don't need to buy your service, but like, I appreciate you reaching out. Like that's what I did when I started my company. Like I get a lot of that, which is fun. And then, yeah, I think the prospecting in person, anytime I'm in town, I drive to construction sites, whatever. And yeah, one of the last times I was out there, drove up on a very large construction site, and met the foreman. Super nice dude. I was wearing my hat, my shirt, the whole thing, and he was like, "Hey, if I give you my address, can you send me one of those hats? Those hats are sweet." And he's like, I don't need your service or anything right now. We aren't doing any dirt hauling." And I sent him one of our hats. A month later, he was like, "Hey, came across a big project that I think we're going to need you on," and we've been out there 3 weeks every day for the last 3 weeks, which is, I mean, that for a construction job, that's a pretty nice payday for us. So yeah, just have normal interactions, and then eventually, like, if they need your service, they're going to remember you, because I mean, I've talked to the people in my industry. No one's doing cold email. Very few people are doing cold calling. Like, you're just, by doing it, you're ahead of the game. And then on top of that, if you're also having like we have our drivers, hey, if you see a pothole, let me know, and I'll reach out to the customer. I'll give you a commission on whatever we get out of that job or whatever. Just the more eyes you have out there, and the more people on your team are prospecting, the better chances you have.
Totally. And I think the reality is, like, you just got to do it, right? You either got to send the email or you got to pick up the phone. And that's one thing both of you are really good at. And that's why I'm thankful that both of you have been guests on the podcast, because for people who are listening to this, and I've mentioned this before, I want this to be the last podcast you ever listen to before you take action. Like, seriously, if you're wanting to start a business, I hope this is the last podcast and you shut down your Spotify and Apple. It's probably not gonna be great for the algorithms for me saying this, but literally, if you want to start a business, you just got to take the action. So I'm just gonna encourage you guys to do what Brandon and Jake are doing and pick up the phone. Don't overcomplicate it. Just do the call. Like Brandon just said, there are very few people in your industry, if you're in these boring businesses or unsexy type services, doing cold outreach or cold calling. Just pick up the phone. It really doesn't even matter what you say. It's like, hey, who do you guys use for snow shoveling services? Hey, who do you guys use for land clearing? Hey, who do you use for road grading? And then just start the conversation. My name's Austin. We're a local business here with Bear Claw. We offer road grading services and land clearing. If you guys ever need it in the future, here's my contact info. I'm going to drop a business card by, and then you just never know where that's going to lead. And so I just encourage you guys who are listening to just do the things and don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Take what Brandon has said on the cold outreach. If you want to get emails out there in mass, take what Jake has said. I mean, Jake basically started this with just like no experience. He literally used his sales experience to go start selling power washing services. If you haven't signed up for the weekly newsletter yet, go to ownerops.com/newsletter. That's OWNROPS.com/newsletter. We summarize all of the learning lessons from the interviews with the guests on the podcast, and we distill those into short, actionable tips, tricks, tactics, and strategies that you can use to grow your own local service business. Sign up for the newsletter at ownerops.com. That's OWNROPS.com. Is there anything either of you want to add for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing, and I fall into this trap sometimes too. Owning a business and just doing anything in general, like, it requires a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it's easy to feel anxious and uncertain about the direction that you're going. The counter to that is by doing the thing. It's, whenever I feel like I'm not I'm like stuck, or like I don't feel like I'm moving the needle forward. And this has just been in general, like with soccer, with my corporate jobs, with this. The antidote to that is by phone calling, by dropping by businesses, by, you know, um, listening to like a podcast, let's say, or just learning and educating yourself to be better. But just going out and doing the thing, like making the calls, sending out emails, just like I said in another podcast, just taking action on where you're going, because you'll find that if you don't do anything to move your business forward, then you're going to feel like crap and you're not going to move forward to achieving your goal. But then if you, let's say you don't sell anything that day, but you added 50 new prospects to your call list, you sent out 500 emails, you did 10 in-person drop-bys and got 5 contacts from that. That's moving your business forward. And so when you talk about getting 1% better each day, that's what it means. It's how are you moving the needle forward? Or how are you getting more prospects? How are you getting closer to another sale? How are you getting closer to earning more revenue? So if you ever feel stuck and you don't know what to do, just do the basic things. Phone call, prospect, email, and drop by. Those like 4 things are the foundations of sales, that will eventually lead to good relationships, better revenue, and then in turn, business growth.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
Brandon,
I
anything you
think
want to add before we wrap this
I
up?
think kind of like what you did with Colorado Powerwash, you set it up before it was even a business. I think the cold outreach is a great way to start something without having even done it. So like getting a list and emailing, like currently I'm doing cold outreach for asphalt services, for a few other business ideas that I have, to see if there's demand. And then it's a super easy way just to start and then force yourself into a business. Like if you sell a pressure washing job, all right, and I kind of want to buy a business or whatever, I'm going to now have to go either find someone who does it or get the equipment and go do it myself. I think it's a great way to start, see if there's demand. It's super low risk. It just takes time. And that's, I mean, for us, I'm looking at some acquisitions, some different things. I do this before I consider the business to see, okay, will what I did with Cleaner Streets, will this work in this market, or will this work for this service or whatever? So I think even if you don't own a business, it's a great way to start, build those skills, and then see if there's demand out there.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys both for sharing. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast. And listeners, thanks again for listening to another episode of the OWNR OPS Podcast. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, we would sure appreciate a 5-star review. Just like building a local service business, 5-star reviews are super important for the podcast as well. So if you don't mind to take 30 seconds, we greatly appreciate it. Also, we're doing a weekly newsletter at this point. So go to ownrops.com/newsletter. That's OWNROPS.com/newsletter. Sign up there. Like I mentioned earlier, we are summarizing all the podcasts, taking the high-level bullet points, and then sending those to you guys in a newsletter to take the action points from things like cold outreach and cold calling, like Brandon and Jake just shared. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. You will get notifications for when we drop new episodes. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, never settle for less. We'll see you guys in the next episode.